In 1350 BC, a civilization built cities in one of the driest places on Earth, the Peruvian Andes, where rainfall comes maybe twice a year and the sun bakes the soil to dust. They had no irrigation pumps, no wells, no water trucks, no infrastructure of any kind that modern engineers would recognize, and they fed millions of people. Their fields were green when everything around them was brown. Their crops never failed. Their cities never thirsted. And when the dry season came, the long, brutal weeks when rivers turned to gravel and the sky offered nothing, they simply walked outside and watered their plants from a reservoir that no one could see. It was underground, stored there by a system so simple it looks like a mistake. A system so effective that a single rainstorm could feed an entire landscape for weeks. That system has a name. It is called a swale, and almost no one in America has heard of it. This is not an accident. To understand what was lost, you need to go back further than the Incas. Around 4,000 years ago, in the deserts of the Middle East, farmers discovered something: watching the land after rain. Water would rush downhill in rivers and flash floods, carve out gullies, tear away the soil, and then vanish, gone in hours. The land would be parched again within days, as though the rain had never come. But in certain low-lying areas, where the ground happened to level off and slow the water down, something different happened. The water pooled. It lingered. It soaked slowly into the earth, and for weeks afterward, the plants in those areas stayed green while everything around them withered. These ancient farmers did not call it hydrology. They did not have a word for infiltration rates or subsurface moisture reserves. They just noticed that flat ground held water and sloped ground lost it. So they started flattening ground on purpose. They carved shallow, level channels across hillsides, not sloped ditches that would carry water away, but perfectly horizontal lines that would catch it and hold it in place long enough for the earth to drink. They stacked these channels down hillsides in terraces. They piled the excavated soil on the downhill side to form low walls. They planted their crops in those walls, directly above the hidden underground reservoirs the channels were slowly filling. The system spread across civilizations the way useful knowledge always does. Not through conquest, not through trade treaties, but through observation. Other cultures saw the green fields and figured out why they were green. The Incas refined it into an engineering art form across the Andes. Dryland farmers in North Africa used a version called zai pits, individual planting holes that caught and concentrated water around single plants. Indigenous Australian communities built stone walls along hillside contours to slow and sink seasonal rainfall. Persian farmers in the Middle East developed underground channels called qanats, miles-long tunnels that followed the slope of a hillside at a precise angle, pulling groundwater toward farms without a single pump. Every dry civilization on Earth, independently, discovered the same principle. Do not chase the rain. Catch it where it falls. Store it underground. Let the land release it slowly, over weeks and months, to everything growing above it. Then came the 20th century, and we forgot all of it. The story of why this system disappeared from American farming is not complicated. It is uncomfortable. When industrial agriculture arrived in the mid-20th century, it brought with it a specific model of how farming worked. You did not work with the land's natural water cycle. You controlled it. You drilled wells. You built irrigation canals. You pumped water from rivers and aquifers. You installed sprinkler systems. This model required infrastructure, which required capital, which required dependence on systems larger than yourself. A farmer who shapes his land to catch rain owes nothing to anyone. A farmer who depends on an irrigation pump owes the pump company, the fuel company, the electric grid, and the bank that financed the well. The economics of dependence are simple. Self-sufficiency does not generate recurring revenue. Fossil fuel irrigation does. By 1970, American agricultural extension offices, the same government programs that were supposed to teach farmers best practices, were promoting centralized water infrastructure almost exclusively. Ancient landscape water harvesting techniques were not just ignored. They were treated as primitive, backwards. The kind of thing that backwards cultures did before they had access to real technology. Then in 1978, an Australian ecologist named Bill Mollison published a book that changed everything for a small group of people paying attention. Mollison had spent years studying indigenous land management systems across Australia, Asia, and the Americas. He was not interested in traditional agriculture the way an anthropologist might be, documenting it from a distance, treating it as a historical curiosity. He was interested in why it worked, and what he found over and over again in cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years was the same fundamental principle. Every civilization that survived long-term in a dry climate had learned to design their landscape so that water moved slowly, soaked deeply, and stored itself underground rather than running away. Mollison called this framework permaculture, permanent agriculture, and at its core was the concept of water harvesting through earthworks. He and his collaborator David Holmgren began teaching these principles at workshops in Australia. A designer named P.A. Yeomans had already been refining a specific system he called keyline design, a sophisticated method for reading a landscape's natural water flow patterns and designing swales and channels that worked with them. By the 1980s, a handful of farms in Australia and the American Southwest were demonstrating what these ancient principles could do in a modern context. The results were the same as they had been 3,000 years ago in the Andes. The research confirmed it. 1 inch of rain falling on a quarter-acre of land represents approximately 6,700 gallons of water. Without intervention, most of that water runs off within hours. With a properly designed swale system, the majority of it soaks into the soil and remains available to plants for weeks. The publications were written, the studies were done, and then, like the Auburn University aquaculture research of the same era, the momentum stopped. Because the moment you design your land to catch its own rain, you stop buying the infrastructure that depends on you not doing that. But the knowledge survived, and now you are going to understand exactly how it works. Before we talk about how to build this, you need to understand the single most important concept in landscape water harvesting. It is called the contour line. Imagine water running down a hillside after rain. It follows gravity, always moving toward the lowest point, always accelerating as it goes. By the time it reaches the bottom of the hill, it is moving fast enough to carry soil with it. It carves gullies, it creates erosion, and it leaves the hillside behind, dry, compacted, and increasingly unable to absorb future rainfall. This is how deserts get worse over time. Now imagine drawing an invisible line across that hillside, a line that connects every point at exactly the same elevation. If you stood on that line and walked in either direction, you would neither climb nor descend. You would be walking level, around the shape of the hill. That line is the contour. And if you dig a shallow level channel along that line, something remarkable happens. When rain falls and water begins to run downhill, it hits your channel. It fills it. And because the channel is perfectly level, not sloped like a drainage ditch, the water has nowhere to go. It cannot flow sideways. It cannot escape downhill. It simply sits there, pressing against the wall of soil you've piled on the downhill edge, and slowly seeps into the earth beneath it. The hillside becomes a sponge. The water does not disappear. It moves underground, pulled by gravity through the porous soil, following the slope of the bedrock deep beneath the surface. It becomes what hydrologists call subsurface flow, invisible, protected from evaporation, moving slowly and constantly toward the lowest point on your property. Everything growing in the soil above it can reach it. Roots extend downward in search of moisture. They find it. They thrive on it for weeks or months after the last rain. This is the system. This is what the Incas built. This is what dryland farmers from Morocco to Arizona discovered independently and used for thousands of years. It is not complicated. It is elegant biological engineering that works because it cooperates with the way water naturally wants to move. The complete backyard water harvesting system has 4 interconnected elements. Each one feeds the others. None of them work in isolation. Component 1, the swale, the water catcher. The swale is the foundation of everything. It is a level trench dug along a contour line of your property, not a drainage ditch. This is critical. A drainage ditch is designed to move water away from an area. It has a slope, it flows, it exits. A swale is designed to stop water in place. It is level from one end to the other. Water enters it from uphill, fills it during rain events, and then slowly soaks into the ground beneath it. The dimensions matter. A typical backyard swale is 12 to 18 inches wide and 12 to 18 inches deep. The soil excavated from the trench is piled on the downhill side to form a berm, a low, wide mound of earth that acts as a secondary barrier, catching any water that does not immediately soak through the base of the swale. Multiple swales stacked down a slope create what permaculture designers call a water harvesting cascade. The first swale catches what it can. Any overflow moves downhill to the second swale, which catches what it can. Any overflow from that reaches the third. By the time rain reaches the bottom of your property, almost nothing is lost to runoff. One heavy rainstorm, 1 inch of rain, can recharge the entire system. Component 2, the berm, the living root zone. The berm is not just a pile of dirt. It is the most important planting bed on your property. Think about what the berm sits above. Directly beneath it, through the soil, is the slowly moving underground water that the swale captured. Roots growing down from the berm surface reach that moisture. They access it continuously, even weeks after the last rain. This is why traditional swale systems always feature trees and perennial plants on the berm, not in the swale itself, which would fill with sediment and impede water movement, but on the mound of soil directly downhill from it. The Incas planted their food forests on terraced berms. The results are visible even today. Their ancient terrace systems, though no longer actively managed, still show evidence of dramatically different soil moisture and vegetation compared to surrounding unmodified hillsides. For a modern backyard, the berm is where you put your fruit trees, your berry bushes, your perennial herbs, any plant you want to thrive with minimal irrigation. Because they are not relying on you to water them. They are relying on the underground reservoir your swale is constantly refilling. Component 3, the rain distribution network, stacked swale. A single swale is useful. A system of stacked swales transforms how your entire property manages water. The principle works like this. When swales are spaced down a slope, each one captures water and releases it slowly underground. That underground water moves downhill and eventually emerges at the surface downslope, near the next swale. The next swale captures it again, stores it again, releases it again. The landscape becomes a series of underground reservoirs, each one recharging the next, like a chain of hidden lakes connected by slow-moving subsurface rivers. In a well-designed system, a single rainstorm sets off a chain of infiltration and recharge that can last for months. The first swale fills and soaks in the first day. 2 weeks later, that water emerges downslope and begins recharging the second swale's underground zone. A month later, it reaches the third. One rain event waters the entire landscape on a rolling, staggered schedule that no irrigation system could replicate. Component 4, the mulch, the evaporation shield. The final component is not glamorous, but it is non-negotiable. Once your swales are dug and your berms are planted, you cover every bare soil surface, the berm, the area between the swale, and the next berm down, everywhere, with a thick layer of wood chip mulch, straw, or dead leaves, 4 to 6 inches minimum. This does one critical thing. It stops evaporation. Bare soil exposed to sun loses moisture rapidly. The top 2 inches can dry completely within hours of rain, regardless of how much water is stored deeper down. Mulch creates an insulating barrier that keeps that moisture in the soil, where roots can access it. Research on mulched versus unmulched soil plots in dry climates shows moisture retention differences of 40 to 60% over comparable time periods. The mulch also feeds soil biology as it slowly decomposes worms, fungi, and bacteria that build the soil structure that makes water infiltrate faster in future rain events. Your system improves itself over time. Year 3 is better than year 1. Year 10 is better than year 3. This is what the Incas understood. This is what the dryland farmers of the Middle East discovered. Once built, the system earns compound interest. The actual construction of this system requires no equipment you cannot rent for an afternoon, and no skills beyond patience and a level. Step 1. Read your land. Walk your property after rain. Watch where water flows, where it pools, where the ground stays wet longest. These observations tell you more than any topographic map. The lowest points that stay wet are your natural storage zones. The channel's water carves in your lawn are showing you exactly where your swales should go. Spend one full rain event just watching. Do not build anything yet. Step 2. Find your contour. You need a simple A-frame level. 2 wooden legs connected at the top by a crossbar, with a string and weight hanging from the center. This is the same tool ancient farmers used on every continent. When the weight hangs exactly in the center of the crossbar, your 2 legs are at the same elevation. You are standing on the contour. Walk the line, marking it with flags or stakes, moving the A-frame in one leg increments along the hillside. 40 minutes, and you have your first contour line mapped. Step 3. Dig. The swale trench should be roughly 18 inches wide and 12 to 15 inches deep. Pile all excavated soil on the downhill side to form the berm. Tamp the berm down with your feet to compact it. Check level along the entire length of the trench floor. If any section is low, it will concentrate all the water there and potentially overflow. The floor of a swale must be dead level. For a typical backyard of 1/4 to 1/2 acre, you are looking at 2 to 4 swales, 20 to 60 feet long each. 2 people can complete the entire earthwork in a weekend with shovels, or a single afternoon with a rented mini excavator. Step 4. Plant the berms. Within the first season, plant the berms with trees, shrubs, or perennial vegetables. Their roots will stabilize the berm and prevent erosion. Bare soil compacts and crusts. Roots keep it open and porous. For most of North America, fruit trees are the ideal berm planting. An apple or pear tree, with roots reaching the swale's underground moisture zone, will receive its water needs met almost entirely without your intervention. After establishment, typically 2 years, you may never water it again. Step 5. Mulch everything. Cover every inch of bare soil with 4 to 6 inches of wood chips, straw, or shredded leaves. The swale trench itself can receive a thin layer of straw on its floor to slow any evaporation there and encourage biological activity. Do not skip this step. Without mulch, you lose 30 to 50% of your system's effectiveness to surface evaporation. Month 1. You will see nothing except your new earthworks. That is correct. The underground system is activating below your feet. Soil biology is colonizing the moist zone beneath your swale. Roots are orienting toward moisture. Month 3. Your berm plantings will begin showing noticeably more vigorous growth than nearby plantings that do not sit above a swale. Not dramatically, but if you have comparison plants elsewhere in your yard, you will notice the difference. 6 months after the first significant rain event, walk your property 10 days after rainfall. Your neighbors' yards will be showing drought stress. Your berm plantings will still look lush. The underground reservoir is working. This is the moment the system becomes real for most people. Year 1 to 2. If you planted fruit trees on your berms, you will see their first productive season. They will require no supplemental watering through dry periods. Your water bill will have dropped measurably. Your soil will be visibly darker and more biologically active than it was when you started. Year 3 and beyond, you are no longer managing a project. You are living inside a functioning landscape. Your trees are producing. Your soil is deepening. Your underground water reserves recharge with each rain and release slowly through each dry period. You have, effectively, installed a water system in your land that will operate for free for the rest of your life. Let's be specific, because the numbers are what make this real. 1 inch of rainfall on a 1/4 acre property represents approximately 6,700 gallons of water. Without landscape intervention, studies on typical suburban lots show that 40 to 70% of rainfall becomes runoff. It leaves your property within hours. That means a 1/4 acre suburban lot loses between 2,700 and 4,700 gallons per rain event to runoff. A properly designed swale system can capture 70 to 90% of that runoff and convert it to infiltration. In practical terms, that same 1 inch rain event now stores an additional 2,000 to 4,000 gallons underground on your property. Average U.S. household water bills run $70 to $100 per month. Outdoor irrigation, lawn and garden watering, accounts for 30% of average household water use in dry months. That is $21 to $30 per month, or $250 to $360 per year for outdoor water that a swale system can eliminate or dramatically reduce. Over 10 years, you are looking at $2,500 to $3,600 saved in water costs alone, not counting the food value of the trees and gardens those swales are supporting. And the setup cost? For a quarter-acre property, the complete swale system, A-frame level, digging, berms, mulch, and initial plants, runs between $200 and $600, depending on whether you dig by hand or rent equipment. The math is as simple as the Incas knew it was. Most resources on swale systems focus on warm climate applications. Here's what actually happens in northern climates. In cold winters, swales freeze on the surface, but the underground moisture reservoir they've built does not disappear. It is insulated by the soil above it and remains liquid. When spring thaw comes and the frost leaves the ground, your swale begins recharging immediately from snowmelt, often the most abundant water your property receives all year. Snow is one of the best things that can happen to a swale system. A property that captures spring snowmelt through a swale network enters summer with a fully recharged underground reservoir, giving trees and perennials a critical head start before summer drought arrives. In desert climates, where rainfall is rare but intense, swales become even more critical. Desert storms drop large amounts of water in short periods. Without swales, that water moves too fast to infiltrate. It runs off and evaporates. With swales, each intense storm event fully recharges the underground system. One good monsoon season can support plant growth through an entire dry year. This is why versions of this system appeared across every dry civilization on Earth. Because in dry climates, water is not scarce. It falls, sometimes intensely, and then disappears. The question is whether you are designed to catch it or not. With swales, you are. Before you start digging, here is the honest, practical picture. In most jurisdictions in the United States, small earthworks on your own property for water harvesting purposes do not require permits. You are reshaping your own land, not altering a waterway. Check your local county regulations, but the overwhelming majority of backyard swale installations require nothing more than a shovel and the decision to begin. Some municipalities have restrictions on water harvesting in states with complex water rights law, particularly in parts of the western U.S., where rainwater collection has historically been regulated. Several of those states have updated their regulations in recent years to allow backyard water harvesting explicitly. Check your state's Department of Water Resources before installing collection infrastructure. The earthworks themselves, the swales, the berms, the mulched beds are almost universally unrestricted. You are gardening. You are landscaping. You are doing what every civilization in history did before industrial water infrastructure made it seem unnecessary. Here is what most guides on swales will not say. When you build this system, you are not just reducing your water bill. You are not just growing better fruit trees. You are removing yourself from a chain of dependency that most people do not think about until it breaks. Municipal water systems are extraordinary feats of engineering. They are also single points of failure. Drought strains them. Infrastructure age degrades them. Rate increases, which have averaged 5 to 8% per year in many American cities over the past decade, make them increasingly expensive. A property designed to catch and store its own rainfall is not disconnected from that system. You still use municipal water, but you are no longer dependent on it for the health of your land. Your trees do not care what the reservoir levels are. Your garden does not care what the water rates are. They care about what is in the soil beneath them. And the soil, if you have done this right, is full of water, stored there by last month's rain, still available, still being used, still supporting life. Fanley understood this when he wrote about fish ponds in 475 BC. The Incan engineers understood it when they carved terraces into the Andes 2,000 years before that. The dryland farmers of the Middle East understood it when they built stone walls across hillsides before written history. You do not need to control the rain. You need to be ready for it when it comes. Build this system, and you are ready. One storm, and your land drinks. It stores what it drinks. It releases it slowly to your trees, your garden, your soil, over weeks and months. 10 years from now, your neighbors will watch their lawns go brown in July and pay to have water trucked in. You will walk outside into shade cast by trees that have never been watered by your hand. Pick a peach that has never seen a drought, and feel something that is hard to describe if you have not felt it. Not pride, exactly. Not self-satisfaction. Something quieter. The feeling of standing inside a system that is working. That has been working. That will keep working without your permission or your intervention. Sovereignty. Not the loud kind. The kind that does not need to announce itself. Because your land is alive. It is drinking, and it will never be thirsty again. If this opened something for you, if you can see yourself standing inside that system 10 years from now, subscribe so you do not miss the next piece of knowledge we uncover. Share this with someone who is tired of depending on systems they cannot see or control. The ancient farmers figured this out thousands of years ago. The tools are still here. The rain is still falling. The only question is whether you are built to catch it.